So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, or good morning, good evening, depending where you are in the world. Thank you for joining us to this LinkedIn Live, where we're going to start to look at how next-gen technologies are going to be financed in CXM delivery. So this is a really common question we get all the time about so much chatter about new technologies that are out there. How are they going to be paid for as part of a CXM deal? So thank you for joining. I would ask you to maybe put in the comment section where you're joining in from. It'll be really good for us to understand how global the audience is, because sometimes we can target some messaging. So please let us know where you are listening in from. And I say that might also help us to make some of the examples that we use more relevant for you based on where you are. So just some brief introductions. So I'm joined by a couple of my colleagues today. I'll do a brief introduction of who I am, and then I'll get them to do a brief introduction. So I'm David Rickard. I'm a partner here at Everest Group, and I lead all of our research on customer experience management, as well as what we call trust and safety, which includes content moderation and also marketing services. I'm based in the UK, but have a global role. And I've been with Everest Group about 3 years. I've also been around in consulting for a few years. But the thing that probably makes my background a little bit more interesting is I was also on the buyer side. So I spent 17 years at Microsoft, senior director responsible for contact center outsourcing. So I've been on the buyer side. So pricing is a topic that's very close to my heart. So hence I love doing these sessions with our two pricing experts that we've joined with today. So Kunal, why don't you start by giving us a brief introduction to yourself?
Hi all, Kunal here. I'm a vice president with the firm. I lead the BPO cluster here in Everest Group from a benchmarking perspective. We have several other clusters within the pricing assurance services, IT applications, IT infra, and BPO. So I lead the BPO cluster. We help both sides of the spectrum, be it the enterprise side and the service provider side, on the various kinds of commercial mandates, be it contract benchmarking, proposal reviews, thematic research on areas like Gen AI, automation, etc. Been in the firm for about 4.5 years now, and overall, I've got 12 years of commercial expertise across BPO and IT services. Rahul?
Thank you, Kunal.
Thanks, Kunal. Hey, hi everyone. Great to be here. Speaking to all of you. My name is Rahul Barve, Vice President within Everest Group, and part of the same team as Kunal. So I co-lead some of the engagements on the BPO price benchmarking areas. Especially, CXM area is quite close to my heart. Right, in the past 7 months, and I've been leading a lot of engagements on the CXM side. Not just supporting a lot of the enterprise clients of ours on various contract benchmarking, price benchmarking, automation specific areas, but also helping a lot of the service providers, right, with relevant pricing intelligence so that they can win more. Happy to be on the call and look forward to share some of the insights that we have got in this space, in this next gen space.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rahul. Thanks, Kunal. So just to set the context for this, and by the way, please do put in the comments where you're listening in from. I haven't seen anybody put anything in yet, and it'll be good to understand where you are, just to make sure you're actually out there, and we're not just talking to ourselves. So, but when we wanted to set this session up, one of the things that we realized is that actually the digital CXM market, as we call it here at Everest Group, so the parts that are really driven by the digital technologies that are out there, I've seen significant growth over the last few years. And when we look at the outsourced market for customer experience management, we estimate it to be about $115 billion. But actually about 15 to 16 billion of that is actually digital CXM. But that's seeing very large growth over the last couple of years. And when we look out to 2026, we actually expect to see significant growth driven by things such as digital technologies, especially Gen AI and the hype around generative AI right now. So we've seen the growth in this market. But one of the things that we keep getting questions on all the time, which is around how are we going to pay for these technologies as part of our overall CXM deal? So one of the things we wanted to do is start having that conversation. We don't have all the answers today. You probably wouldn't expect us to, although I'm sure you would like if we did. But actually what we wanted to do is to start having the conversation. What are we seeing today? But then also what do we expect to see in the future? So what we're going to cover in the agenda is what other technologies that we see are included as part of outsourcing deals today. So you can get an understanding of what we're seeing in the marketplace. We're then looking at how are they being priced into the deals, so you can again understand from a today perspective what we're seeing and how that's being done, because they will be the platforms to move forward in terms of future pricing models. And then last but not least, we're going to look at the cost components of Gen AI and how we think that could be priced into deals in the future. So that's sort of the three areas that we're going to be covering today, and hopefully that aligns to what you've tuned in for to have that conversation. I would also encourage you to put questions in the comment section as well. So we're happy to take questions throughout the session. So please feel free to put questions in. And one last thing before we get into the data, we've also got a free offer for any of our attendees, where actually we're offering a complimentary price benchmark for contact center services. So if you fill in the form that's posted in the chat, we'll actually give you some complimentary data, which is very valuable, and we see it as real high value to our customers. And we'll give you some insights into the price points that you can be expecting for a particular service. So please put your comments in the comment section or comment in the chat section, and then we'll follow up with you after this call to get you access to that price point. So let's get into the technology, into the content, and really, Kunal, Rahul, why don't we start with what are the different technologies that we see are actually being included in CXM deals today? So, yeah, maybe we can start with that, and then let's set the scene so we can move forward.
Sure. If we talk about the technologies, David and Rahul, it can be classified broadly into two categories, right? One is the run-of-the-mill technologies, which have been there to enable the CX services. And those could be classified into three broad buckets. One is the process enabling solutions, the likes of workflow tools, dialers, and things like reporting and SLA tracking solutions, which are, kind of bread and butter in any CXM deals, wherein the enterprises are looking for, the real data. So, for example, how many calls were logged in? How many calls were answered by the, CSRs? How many got abandoned? How many, were marked as unresolved, right? So these are some of the process enabling solutions wherein we are talking about, reporting tools, visualization and dashboarding tools, dialers, and workflow tools. The next broad bucket would be, your call center enabling solutions. So, solutions like ACD and IVR solutions, which are, kind of automating a lot of these volumes which come up in the queue and are contained by these, the IVR solutions. At one point in time, we used to say that, IVR is, a next gen thing, but the technologies are evolving and evolving so fast that, some of the so-called sophisticated technologies are actually traditional technologies and are perceived to be, traditional and standard by enterprises as well. So tools like ACD, IVR solutions, computer technology integration, call recording and monitoring systems, knowledge management systems, and workflow management tools, which could, estimate the peak and troughs in the call center business, because that's how the staffing is done by service providers, and it's essential to ensure that the SLAs and KPIs are being met. So these are some of the call center enabling solutions, again, the backbone of any CXM project. The next one would be, what I will say, the traditional automation solutions, the likes of chatbot, virtual assistant solutions. They have been in the industry for long now. So self-service channels, macros, continuous improvement tools, unified desktop, that's one thing that I would like to specifically call out, and QA, QC tools, quality monitoring, to ensure that the calls are resolved as per the, standard operating procedures. The CSRs are answering based on, the intents that the, company is receiving. So in a nutshell, these would be the traditional technologies, basically, or essentially the backbone of any customer service stack. Rahul, why don't you just cover the next gen technologies and try to come up with these interesting tools that we see nowadays?
Thanks, Kunal. Yes, so certainly, the overall, CXM area is seeing a lot of new next gen technologies, right? Of course, Gen AI is an elephant in the room, right? And we'll come to that. However, there are also, multiple others, technology stack that has come to light, in the last 3 to 5 years, and are kind of evolving at a much faster pace, right? So the first category that I would want to talk about in next gen technologies in CXM is essentially some of the advanced analytics tools, right? So a lot of CXM service providers are currently providing a lot of analytics specific projects, likes of customer segmentation, targeting a specific customer segment, or even trying to help their enterprise understand the overall voice of the customers, right, and what they should focus on, right? So some of those projects definitely are being handled, right? Apart from the regular reporting tracking solutions that Kunal mentioned, right? Not just that, we are also seeing next gen analytics in some of the live conversations as well, right? Things around sentiment analysis or even speech analytics, kind of tools are being brought in by a lot of service providers as a kind of value add, as part of the existing CXM deals. We are also seeing things related to voice biometrics, right, which kind of automatically help validate the right customers, right, before actually going into the live channel as well, right? So some of those analytics, advanced analytics tools, right, are certainly something that we are observing in the market. Not just that, certainly automation overall has taken has actually enhanced leaps and bounds, right? So compared to some of the earlier unified desktops, right, we are seeing a lot more agent assist tools, right, which kind of prompt on what should be the next best action, based on the current conversation, right? Overall data collection that these intelligent tools are happening. Of course, robotic process automation, though we are calling it next gen, is currently one of the commonplace, right, in a lot of the CXM deals, right, that we are currently observing, as well as some of the AI powered knowledge base as well, which are being kind of assisting a lot of the agents, right, on live situations. So that's also something that we are observing. Call summarization specific tools, even a lot of those IBRs have got quite smarter now, right? So automatic automatic understanding of the specific intent, and based on that kind of smart routing, right? Some of those tools that we are seeing, which is definitely helping reduce a lot of agent effort, and service providers are also providing productivity specific benefits out of these intelligent automation, is something that we are definitely seeing in a lot of the CXM deals. Gone are the days where a lot of those CXM deals have been more of the body shopping, right? But now it's definitely much more value adding, right? Not just on intelligent automation, we are seeing a lot of cloud specific cloud contact center platforms as well, which are being proposed in deals, especially contact center as a service. A lot of CXM players have actually tied up with some of the leading CCaaS players in the market, and are definitely reducing the overall time to kind of market, right? The overall transition times, and getting that technology at a faster pace, right, as part of any specific account, right, which is to be ramped up. So certainly cloud contact center as a service, we are seeing a lot more deals, right, going into these compared to a lot of those traditional solutions, right? Even omni-channel platforms, right, and a lot of these CCaaS providers also provide the overall not just the channel related to voice, or even kind of an email or chat, right? These provide multiple channels, including social media as well, right? So certainly we are seeing a lot more value that enterprises are finding, right, going through this omni-channel platforms, right, whenever they are and looking to get giving a chance to customers to go through multiple and reach out through multiple channels. Also self-service customer portals, trying to reduce the overall need for a call altogether, right, and reduce the overall call volumes, right? So that's also something that that we are seeing proposed by a lot of service providers. And last not the least, conversational AI. Yes, the chat bots have been there. The ML based, NLP based chatbots had been there, right? However, the big Gen AI has certainly arrived, and we do have a separate section where we're going to talk a lot about Gen AI, the cost, etc. But yes, conversational AI is something which currently a lot of experts, including us, right, believe that can really disrupt the overall CXM industry and BPO industry, right? So yeah, I think that's also something where we are seeing a lot of the CXM growth, right? Digital specific CXM growth going forward. So these are some of the technologies just want to talk about. David?
Thanks, Rahul and Kunal. Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is that we've not addressed, but we'll address now. So anyone who's listening in, don't worry, we'll get there. And again, any comments you got, please put them, or questions you've got, please put them in the comment section, and we'll address them live. But one of the things that we would often be asked, or you'll, and I'm going to ask you, which is, this technology is great, but it's not free. So how is it being paid for? How is it being factored into deals today? Because that is going to shape the way that we have to think about Gen AI from a cost perspective moving forward. But how are we paying for this today? Because having been a buyer for many years, I would love to have been included as a free service, but it's not. It has to be paid for. So what are you seeing when we're looking at how it's being paid for?
Yeah, so let me take that one. So, see, it could be possible that the enterprise procures a part of the traditional technology stack themselves, and even next gen technologies. We have seen that the enterprises buy some licenses of automation themselves. But if we talk about from a outsourced service provider perspective, when they bring in their technology, let's say in a managed services engagement, mostly the cost of the traditional technologies, the ones on the left side of this page, are charged in two broad ways. One, as part of the FD rate or a per call contact rate itself, wherein it is just an OPEX cost, right? Or secondly, there could be a one-time charge for developing some solutions. So, for example, you have self-service channels over there, and there could be, a period wherein the service provider is implementing and developing those self-service portals or channels for the enterprise, so that the volume could be contained in the first place. So the development or the implementation charge for some of these traditional solutions could be charged upfront or amortized over the contract term. But mostly what we have seen is things like ACD, IVR solutions, CTI, call recording monitoring, WFM tools. Those are kind of included in the per hour, per FTE, or per call or a per chat rate, rather than being separately billed to the client as a separate charge. Like you said, David, the enterprise expect these tools to be kind of free of cost, but nothing's free, right? The service provider does incur cost on these traditional technologies, and those are charged to the client as part of the approaches that I talked about. Rahul, what about the next gen technologies? Any insights on that?
Sure, Kunal. Thanks, for kind of covering some of the traditional technologies, right? Although, we do see multiple pricing mechanisms, right, depending on the client context, especially for some of the, next gen technologies and their, associated price as well. However, let me just call out some of the common ones, right, that we have observed, across some of these technologies, right? So if I talk of advanced analytics specifically, right, what we have observed, a lot of the CXM players actually mostly do this, as a kind of an ad hoc, consulting project with a focused problem statement, right? And that's where, generally these can be charged as a kind of a fixed fee, or maybe in a time and material based fee, right? Depending on the overall effort. However, we have also seen few cases of some of those outcome based constructs as well, specific to some of these customer specific analytics use cases. right? And sometimes we have seen in some of the long-term CXM deals, these could be positioned as a value add, right? With few resources being allocated and specific analytics use case being added in the overall pricing, right? In that case, some of those price is generally put under the digital the digital technology cost or something like a transformation cost, right? And when we talk of the intelligent automation as well, right, especially in some of the you know uh, uh, the longer term deals, we see the similar way that we talked about, right, where we see it in priced as a kind of a fixed fee with some recurring charges, right, for some of those license specific charges and maintenance specific charges, and that is included again something like a digital cost or a transformation specific cost, right? That's how we generally observe some of these. However, we have also seen that not just as cost, even the productivity benefits are which are coming right out of these intelligent automation tools been reflected in the overall FT glide path, right? So generally some of these tools should have a decent ROI right in place for giving overall benefit to the client, right? In some of the legacy contracts, right, especially the CXM ones, which were more body based, right, than more value driven, we have seen some of these also implement as a separate project in itself, right? In a similar mechanism like a fixed fee with some of those gain sharing mechanism linked to the overall productivity commitments as well. Yeah. When I talk about the cloud contact center solution, the CCaaS solution, right? A lot of the CXM players are using some of the third-party solutions as well, and in some of those cases, we actually see the price being clearly called out separately as a pass-through cost, and it could include both one-time fee initially as well as some of the recurring charges as well, right? And last but not the least, coming to conversational AI. So traditionally, we have seen these being treated quite similar to the intelligent automation, the overall fee structure. However, we are seeing a lot of changes in terms of the pricing model. In some of the cases, we have seen a kind of a per chat or a per conversation, a kind of a pricing also being quite explored by service provider, right? Not just for the platform, but the overall solution itself, right? So that's something that we're certainly seeing a lot of different approaches depending on the specific technologies and client context, right? But definitely the transparency in terms of the pricing is a lot of service providers and enterprises are actually looking forward to, right, when some of these pricing are looked at.
Yeah, thanks, Rahul. I just want to answer the question. So Arunima from the audience has asked a question about what is the deal tenure or engagement timeline we can expect on some of these deals. So I know we've got research into average deal length and tenure, etc. So maybe you can just share some quick insights on that, and then we'll move on to the Gen AI topic, which I know is obviously a hot topic, but maybe we can just give a little bit of insights on that first.
Yeah, let me take that question. So, when we talk about the tenure of contact center deals, which will have Gen AI or for that matter, any next gen tool, there would be different activities that will be involved. One is, let's say, structuring of the data itself. The vectorization of data can take many weeks and months to ensure that the model could be made ready for the enterprise. The second element would be training the model to ensure that there is reasonable accuracy that the enterprise can expect on the volumes that are flowing through it. These would take time, and from a provider perspective, they would like to have a longer deal tenure just to ensure that some of these basic essential activities could be taken care of. And alternatively, let's suppose a short-term deal of about 1 or 2 year. About 6 to 8 months would just go by, training the model to achieve reasonable accuracy, and then with their other productivity levers, there wouldn't be quite a runway for them to show a business case to the enterprise, which is definitely one of the concern. So the answer to your question would be, the typical deal tenure or the engagement timeline for Gen AI included projects would be, at least 3 years and preferably 5 years or even 7 years.
But just going back, Kunal, I think the question was also even on some of these traditional technologies, what are we seeing in terms of annual tenure or length of time a typical CX deal is being struck? And I think the data that you've shared recently is between about 3.2 and 3.5 years. So I think the tenure of a deal, the deal length is about that time now, and they're getting longer. I think, again, the data we issued in one of our state of the market reports, it might have been 3.2 years previously, and it's now 3.5. So I think average deal length is getting longer to about 3.5. And we'll get into the detail about Gen AI in a moment around the deals as well. But hopefully that answered the question. But maybe, Kunal, to direct a direct question to you then, and also another one, which is, so as we move on and start thinking about Gen AI, do you think that Gen AI will change the way deals are being structured as they are today? So we've spent 20 minutes talking about how they're done today. Where do you think we'll go in the future when we start thinking more about Gen AI?
Yeah, so fundamentally, based upon the observations from our enterprise project, see, some of the enterprises are looking at outsourcing from a very different lens, and a few of the enterprises have already invested in innovation labs and innovation teams. So now the frame of reference has moved towards optimize and then perhaps a lift and shift, rather than the traditional model wherein it was about lift and shift and then transform and optimize. So that's the fundamental shift wherein the service provider may have to co-work or co-invest with the enterprise to ensure that the optimization of the process is done before lifting the bulk operations part. So that's one thing that I observe could happen in a few engagements. The second would be the pricing model itself, and now the main concern from an enterprise perspective as to how can I decoy the overall fee from the labor charges, because across the globe inflation has been a problem to deal with, especially if you're an enterprise. And even if you're a service provider. Now the questions that we receive is how can the tech solutions change the model to ensure that some cost savings could be passed on to the enterprise, and that's wherein the service providers are asking for more flexibility in implementing some of these projects, and they should get more control rather than the enterprise looking for how many people did you stack in this particular month, how many people did you stack in this particular month, are you maintaining your span of control ratios, etc. So from a model perspective, we believe that the model could skew towards more of a transaction-based pricing model, wherein the benefits and any efficiencies through these technologies or any operational efficiencies as well could be baked in to counter the impact of inflation and try to achieve the enterprise objectives. So those two come at the top of my mind, the entire lens of looking at an outsourcing deal, and secondly, the pricing model.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kunal. So maybe moving over to you, one of the things that would really be good to get a bit more of a perspective on is what are the different cost components that we have to think about for Gen AI as we think about it from a buyer's perspective. So what should a buyer be considering when they're starting to think about the cost for Gen AI solutions in a CXM context?
Sure, David. Certainly, we can talk about some of the cost components, right? So, but before going into that, right, let me first talk about what are the options, right, that any enterprise would have, right, in terms of implementing a Gen AI solution, and then of course get into some of the cost components, right? So based on our research, essentially we are talking about around 3 models, right? So the first model essentially is around exposing the overall commercial or kind of what we call the closed source LLMs as APIs, right? So things like Chat GPT or kind of Catonic specific platforms, right? Where the overall LLM is not open for kind of overall fine tuning by the enterprises, right? So in this case, you are essentially taking the overall LLM as it is, right, from a technology provider, and then exposing as an API, and then kind of using it, right. The second model is where you as an enterprise have a more option to even kind of fine tune the overall commercial LLM in this case, right. And what we call essentially is you can actually train the overall LLM based on your specific organization specific data or an industry specific data, and then kind of use those LLM models, right, focused on your specific use cases, right. And the third one is something which is definitely an option but may not be a preferred one, is a kind of setting up your overall proprietary LLM from scratch. And definitely it would have a lot more investment, right. The overall complete training essentially would need to be done, right, from the enterprise. So now if I talk of some of the cost components, right, across each of these models, right. So if I talk of the first model, right, which is, by the way, right, one of the most common models being kind of leveraged, right, by especially some of the service providers are also kind of using white labeling to kind of use this model, right. So the first cost is around some of the overall implementation cost of kind of exposing the overall API, right. That we see, right. This the second cost, what we call is the inference cost, right. So this is essentially, right, a lot of these commercial LLMs charge on a per token kind of a basis, right. And this is the cost of actual servicing, right. So any transaction that goes through these LLMs or some of those tokens, right, and that which are kind of prompted, and even the completion tokens, right, those are all kind of charged, right. So this is more of an ongoing cost, right, as you're using the overall API based LLM model here, right. So that's the inference cost. The third one is around the overall resource costs that would be required in kind of refining the existing API based LLM. So the refining, you can't do much on the model itself, but the refining here would be more in terms of, okay, what should you kind of prompt, right. And a lot of prompt engineering and those kind of resources would be required, right. So what is the essentially statement that you would want to put so that you get the right output, right, from the model, right. So that's where some of the tweaking would happen in terms of the resource cost, right. And some of those prompt engineers would be kind of required, and of course the overall platform setup cost, right, and the license cost of the overall LLM, right. So these are some of the cost with respect to the overall API based LLM model, right. So as we are calling it, when I talk about the second model, right, when you're actually fine tuning the overall LLM based on your industry specific data, or let's say your organization specific data, there's definitely this tuning cost, right, which would come into the picture, where a lot of those compute as well as training of the data, that there will be effort related to the data, your data or industry specific data cleansing, right, which will go into tuning of the LLM, right. So that tuning cost certainly there. And some of the other costs related to the resource cost, right, that we just talked about in order to train the specific model in the specific case, as well as the overall prompt engineering, right, that we talked about, right. Some of those still applies. In this case, there's additional cost around the hosting, right, because you are not using an existing API. So there's a hosting cost that would also come into the picture, along with the platform cost, right. And then when we talk about the third model altogether, where you are building the whole proprietary LLM from scratch, in this case, essentially you will require tons of data, tons of compute resource to kind of train your overall model, right, based on your specific requirement. So that's definitely the pre-training costs that would be required, along with some of the resource costs, right? So ongoing resource costs that we talked about, that will require some of those fine tuning as we go along. The hosting is something that you will have to manage by your own in this particular case, as well as all the maintenance updates, right? And even re-alteration of the model, right? All of those costs also come into the picture, along with the platform cost that we talked about, right? So certainly there are nuances based on the different models, right? Though the first is probably the more common model, where some of those hosting specific costs kind of go away, right? So these are definitely some of the costs that we are looking at. However, Kunal, do you want to throw a light on what is the typical breakup of some of these cost components whenever you're looking at a Gen AI use case? And we can probably go to the next slide to kind of talk about it.
Sure, absolutely. And thanks, Rahul, for covering those three models in depth. So I will just quickly talk about, a typical generative AI spend breakdown. Again, this is by no means definitive. This is based upon the use cases which are shorter and smaller. So there are multiple components. We can group the various cost heads into five main categories. Platform cost, which typically contributes about 40 to 50% and relates to the cost of procuring and building the Gen AI platform. The next cost element is token cost for LLMs. That is expected to contribute about 8 to 15%. Just for an illustration, the GPT-4 8K context model charges about 3 cents for 1,000 tokens for input and about 6 cents for 1,000 token for output. The rates doubles if you are talking about a 32K context model. So again, like I said, these are very high level numbers. Infrastructure cost could contribute about 15 to 20% here, and we are talking about hosting the model through virtual machines, microservices, storage, etc. Platform support costs could take anywhere between 10 to 15% of the overall cost. Implementation cost, and herein, like I said, we are talking about shorter, smaller, and simpler use cases, could be about 5 to 15% of the overall cost. The net takeaway is that for smaller engagements, the platform cost could be really high compared to the implementation cost.
Brilliant. Thanks, Kunal. And yeah, I think this is such an emerging area. We're doing a lot of work at Everest Group right now, looking at use cases, specifically from my area in CXM, looking at where people are moving from proof of concepts into proper deployment. So I think that this is an evolving area, and we're going to get more and more data over the next few months and years. And obviously, we'll be sharing that as we can through our usual channels as well. So thank you for that. So we understand now how the breakdown of costs work. How are we going to pay for it? So if I'm a service provider, how should I be thinking about presenting deals and including this? But also from my buyer perspective, how should I be looking to pay for this? How do I make sure I get the best deal? I'm not paying for something I'm not using. So maybe you guys can give me, Kunal, you can give me some sense of that and give the audience a sense of that.
Yeah, so we are looking at various interesting examples through the proposals that we review right now, David, and a lot of CX specialists are proposing Gen AI enabled solutions as part of their overall solution, as part of their overall digital solution. And interestingly, we do not see a charge for it, right? So essentially, the exec summary says that the entire solution that relates to Gen AI is an investment that the service provider is doing. Now, when we talk to service providers, they say that these solutions are a trigger to ensure that we are achieving those benefits or commitments that we are proposing to the client, right? And we have already invested in these technologies, and charging mechanism for Gen AI could be really complex for the enterprise to understand. So in some of the proposals, we have seen that there is no separate charge for the generative AI solution per se. Now that could be included as part of the per FT or a per unit rate card, and it's not visible as a separate standalone line item. That's one way, but the other way, wherein some of the service providers are trying to commercialize their AI solution, is trying to understand the process itself. So, for example, they are trying to understand the typical AHT for a call according to the industry and the business line of the enterprise. So let's say for a telecom client, the typical AHT duration is about 8 minutes, right? Now, in that 8 minutes, how many words are being exchanged between the customer and the service provider? Now, it's a known fact that the charge for AI is based upon a token, and there is a relation between the tokens and the words as well. So some of these service providers are coming up with an estimate of how many words get exchanged in a conversation, and they are trying to have a fixed rate for a defined number of tokens that get exchanged between the enterprise and the service provider. So if I talk about what we have laid out in this slide, if we look at the broad number of projects, human effort plus AI solutions, the typical model will be a hybrid model wherein the human effort could be charged on a per call, per chat, per email, or even the input-based model, whereas the AI solutions could be either positioned as an investment, or even there could be some fixed fee or recurring cost based upon X numbers of tokens that are exchanged, or X number of words that get exchanged. Or let's say in the marketing parlance, what is the price per image that is being assisted by a generative AI, or what is the price per image created by a Gen AI? Those are some of the metrics which are being thought about to charge the Gen AI solution.
Thanks, Kunal. And so as we still come to the end of this, I would encourage the audience, if you've got any questions, please put them in the comment section, because we'll try and take a few questions at the end. But I'm always interested when we talk about outcome-based solutions. So having been around for a long time, we've tried to do outcome-based solutions for many years. But the challenge always has been that even though both organizations agree that outcome-based models might be the right thing, when you try and contract for them, and legal and finance teams get involved, and it's always really hard to try and establish which part of the organization drove the outcome. You end up getting into some really vicious spiral, and you can never really achieve outcome-based pricing because it's just too hard to contract for, and it goes into the too hard to do bucket, and therefore everyone just defaults to some sort of hybrid model. Why do you think will be different in Gen AI, or do you think it'll be different in Gen AI? So Rahul, maybe you got a view on that.
Yeah, David, I think it will not be completely different, right? In fact, I would have even more pessimistic view when it comes to Gen AI, right? Because I mean, outcome-based model, right? Some of the challenges you just mentioned are already, kind of difficult to implement, right? And with, generative AI, right? There's certainly a lot of, there's certainly, a lot of risk factors, right, which are involved in terms of the overall certainty of savings, because it also depends on the enterprise data, right? If the enterprise data stack, right, is not appropriate for the model to work, and the data is not appropriate for the model to work, which providers can't control, right? They can't go with a outcome based model at the start, right? And even this technology in itself is quite into the early stages here, right? Some of the use cases are not that mature, and it's not yet scaled, right? So some of those are certainly the challenges, right, when I look at from an outcome based standpoint. However, from an enterprise standpoint, certainly there's a lot of even more willingness, right, for outcome based models when it comes to Gen AI, right? Especially considering the huge initial investments, right, that are required. I mean, overall, if I were to speak, right, do have a pessimistic view, right, on based on outcome based conversations. But let's see how it goes, right? Probably time will tell.
Brilliant, thanks, Rahul. And one last question before we start to wrap it up. So again, two things. One, any questions, please put them in the comments. Secondly, I'll just remind you of our free offer. So if you're interested in getting some price benchmarking information, then please complete the link in the comment section, where you get access to some of our price points, and we'll follow back up with you after this session. But just to start thinking about this, one of the things that people are really interested in pursuing technology for is to drive the cost down, because we know that enterprises are looking to improve customer satisfaction whilst also reducing their cost, and it's always a hard circle to square. So one of the things that the assumption is that you'll be able to reduce your cost by leveraging Gen AI. But one of the other interesting factors is that, yes, you may be able to reduce volume, but when you're going to be taking out a lot of your simple interactions, then actually you may have to invest in greater or higher levels of talent to deal with what's left, because they're going to need higher levels of empathy or higher levels of problem solving, and they may actually be higher cost to resource. And so the benefits may not be as great as they initially sound, although they will drive a better experience, which is what we're all trying to achieve. But Kunal, what's your view on that? I mean, do you think that we are going to be able to see those savings, or where do we see it from a resourcing perspective?
So David, that's a great thought. While we are talking about automating a lot of things through Gen AI, the blended rate of the team that will work upon the remaining volumes, in all likelihood, will go up. Now, the enterprises and the service providers should look at the overall spend rather than the rate card. So, you know, how many people are required to do the same number of volumes? That should go down, and the rate would go up. But on net or on average, the overall cost of CX outsourced services is likely to go down. So, we suggest taking a TCV view, or rather a TCO view, rather than just being fixated on a per hour rate or a per productive hour rate, because that certainly, in all likelihood, will go up, just because you need to have people with those skills, empathy skills, convincing skills, to ensure you are reaching the desired target of SLAs and KPIs. So yeah, so it's mostly about looking at the TCOV.
Yeah, no, it's great, and that really echoes to what we talk to a lot of sourcing and procurement teams about, which is trying to move beyond an RFP where you're just looking at flat rates of per hour or per minute or per FTE, and looking at the total cost, because again, your rate may be higher, but actually your total volume and your total cost of support, which is a number I always like to look at, is actually should be reducing. So that's great. So don't see any questions. So 2 minutes and 1 minute before we look to close. But I think this has been a really interesting conversation. I think we know that this is an evolving area. We're doing more and more research in this all the time as technologies and a lot of the Gen AI solutions move from pilot to production. We'll have a lot more data. So we'll keep revisiting this topic. And obviously anyone who's tuning in can always come to us with any questions. But just as we look to wrap, Rahul, Kunal, any last leaving thoughts for us, for the audience, in terms of where you think this is going, or anything that would be a key for a buyer or service provider to bear in mind?
So just a comment. So just a comment that it's also important for the service providers and enterprises to be abreast of the international regulations which are governing the AI. There was one landmark decision taken by the European Association of AI yesterday. They are imposing some guardrails for the usage of AI, and that would be key to the entire business model of AI, and how would it influence the CX operations in general.
Great thought, Kunal, and thanks for pointing it out. Right, so I think one of the key, not just pricing, right? I do feel a lot of those contracting terms, right, with respect to some of those AI solutions, should be kept in mind, right, both from an enterprise standpoint as well as from a service provider standpoint, especially some of the liability clauses, right? So, of course, I'm quite excited about Gen AI and the overall impact that it could have in the overall BPO or CXM industry, right? But yes, we need to be mindful of some of those challenges, right? Legal challenges that could also arrive, and how can you actually circumvent, right, as a buyer, right? So that's something that you should definitely look at.
Brilliant. Thank you. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I don't see any other questions, so we can close it there. We always try and make these 45 to 50 minutes, so we're spot on. So appreciate your time today. As I said, please, if you're in the audience, you've got other questions, then please reach out. You've got our details as part of the LinkedIn Live promotion that we've done. And then obviously you've got access to us through the complimentary offer that we've made as well. So thank you for your time. Watch this space. We will be doing a lot more research on this area over the next 3, 6, 12 months. And it's constantly evolving and changing. So sure we'll have some more interesting insights for you over the next few months. Thank you very much, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.